I will call the meeting to order, please. Oh, while we're filling people's names in, we will say good morning, Madam Minister, and welcome. We shall begin, and as you know, we are doing a five-meeting study on women in sport. So we are now welcoming the department and Minister Qualtrough here to talk to us about women in sport and some of the challenges that they face and what we can do to ensure that women are seen and heard and become coaches and other parts of the sports system. So you know that we will be having a 10-minute presentation from the Minister, and then, of course, we will have an interactive session in which the department will be able to answer if they wish, if the Minister so wishes. So thank you very much. Minister Qualtrough, will you begin, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to be here today. Je suis ravie de comparaître devant ce aujourd'hui. Permettez-moi d'abord de féliciter les membres du comité d'avoir entrepris une étude sur les femmes et les filles dans le sport. À titre d'athlète paralympique, d'administratrice ayant une vaste expérience dans le système sportif canadien et de mère.
As a Paralympian, an experienced administrator in Canada's sports system, and the mother of two girls, I believe this is an issue that is more than worthy of study and of the government's attention. As someone who was working for Dennis Mills when he was preparing his report almost 20 years ago, I can tell you how far we've come. I've seen a great deal of progress over the last 2 decades. I've lived it. I'd like to share my views of the progress we've achieved, as well as my observations on the gender inequities that remain and that keep our women and girls from succeeding. Canadian women and girls are excelling in high-performance sport like never before. Successful athletes, such as Penny Oleksiak, Brooke Henderson, and Aurélie Rivard, inspire pride in all Canadians. More than this, their example shows us what women can do. Because of women athletes like them, young women and girls across the country can see themselves excelling in sport. For many, this may be just the encouragement they need to take a chance and get involved in sport. At the Rio Olympic Games this summer, an impressive 16 of the 22 medals awarded to Canada were won by women. And at the 2016 Rio Paralympic Games, 11 of the 29 medals for Canada were earned by women athletes.
And will have untold ripple effects throughout the world of sport and beyond. When women succeed in any sector where they are underrepresented, their success helps break down the barriers that keep others out. This is also reflected in the leadership ranks of the Canadian sports system, where more and more women are taking on decision-making roles. They include Canadian Olympic Committee President Tricia Smith and the CEOs of the Canadian Paralympic Committee, the Coaching Association of Canada, the Canadian Association for the Advancement of Women in Sport, Canada Basketball, and Tennis Canada. I believe you've already met some of these women in the course of this study. The achievements of our female athletes and sport leaders are indicative of how far we've come. Decades ago, the challenges were about access, simply getting in the door. Now, it's a question of reaching our full potential for the betterment of sport and of society. As part of this evolution, our policy on women's and girl in sport was updated to foster sport environments at all levels that encourage and support the participation of women and girls as athletes, coaches, technical leaders and officials, and governance leaders. Because an inclusive sports system is the reflection of an inclusive society. And a society that fosters the full participation of all women and girls fosters the participation of people with disabilities, members of visible minority groups, and Indigenous people. Yet, despite the considerable progress that has been made in recent years, gender inequality persists, and traditionally underrepresented groups remain on the sidelines. Canadian women and girls across all demographics participate in sport at lower rates than men and boys. And while many teenagers drop out of sport, the rate is particularly concerning for girls. We know that messages conveyed by the media about women, femininity, and sport present a major challenge to keeping girls involved in sport. And we need to think about how we can change this. It's not just girls who miss out when they drop out of sport, it's all of society. We need to stop thinking about this as just a girls' problem or a sport problem. In fact, it's a manifestation of the larger inequalities that persist in society. That's why we as a society need to tackle this issue together. Here's what we know. While there is a relatively strong focus on our female medalists at the Olympic and Paralympic Games, there is little coverage of women and girls in sport the rest of the time. Par exemple, en 2014, seulement
For example, in 2014, only 4% of sports programming on Canada's national sports networks featured women's events. In addition, during the coverage of Rio 2016 events, we saw examples of sports media reporting on female athletes in a way that reinforced stereotypes and outdated gender roles instead of prioritizing athletic achievement. This is just one example of the gender bias and inequity that still exist in organized sport. And it's a reflection of persistent attitudes in society, a society in which a gender wage gap of close to 20% continues to exist, and women continue to shoulder the bulk of unpaid domestic tasks. All of this makes it more difficult for women to take on volunteer and high-profile leadership roles. We see this clearly in international sport federations. Women account for fewer than 6% of international federation presidents, 12% of vice presidents, and 13% of executive committee members. In short, women and girls continue to face barriers to full participation and representation in the Canadian sports system at all levels and in all capacities. We need to change this.
The Government of Canada is taking steps to address these issues in cooperation with provincial and territorial governments. Only national organizations that demonstrate that their programs benefit both men and women are eligible for federal funding. About half of our athletes in the Athlete Assistance Program recipients are women. A main objective of our bilateral agreements and sport participations with provinces and territories is to provide opportunities from persons from underrepresented groups and our marginalized populations to actively participate in sport as athletes, coaches, officials, and volunteer leaders. We know, however, that we still have a lot to do, and we must take action. All of us together, women, men, sport organizations, and governments. Promoting gender equality and inclusion in sport will benefit countless women and girls of all backgrounds and abilities, and in turn, society as a whole. Sport helps create social cohesion and builds more inclusive communities. To capitalize on this, we need to encourage participation in sport and also in coaching and sport administration by traditionally underrepresented groups. These include women and girls, as well as people with disabilities and Indigenous people. As Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities, I'm committed to ensuring that all Canadians benefit from sport. And I'm determined to close the gender gap in sport participation and leadership for women of all backgrounds and abilities. I anxiously await the recommendations of your study to do even more to encourage the full participation of women and girls in sport and in the Canadian sports system. And I'd now be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. And now we begin with our questions. The first round, as you know, is 7 minutes, and that includes the questions and the answers. And so we will begin sharing their time for the Liberals, Julie de Brussen and Mr. Dan Van Daal.
Well, thank you, Minister. And I wanted to start by acknowledging that we have Senator Nancy Ruth here at the table today, and she has been a very strong proponent for women in sports and has done a lot of work on that issue. So thank you for being here. I was happy to hear that you had actually worked on the recommendations for the 1998 Heritage Committee report, because that's what got us talking. And I was wondering if you'd had a chance to look at those recommendations and how they have been actioned, or if they're even relevant anymore.
Thank you. I mean, I think absolutely that the recommendations are relevant, and it was actually the start of my journey in politics, this report. So this is, I always credit Dennis Mills to bringing me into this and never letting me get out. A lot of the, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to pull them up because I know it's very important to me that I get this right. These recommendations form the basis of a lot of the work that has happened since, and I believe that they're absolutely relevant because they talk about all the things that I've just alluded to and the things you're talking about here today. So increased participation rates, increased opportunities in coaching, increased data, increased strategies, and what's come out of the Mills report, or these recommendations specifically, has been a focus by governments, and I'd say federal government and PT governments as well, provincial territorial government, on women and girls in sport. So what came out of the Mills report led to the development of our specific policy on women and girls in sport at Sport Canada, and I happen to have sat on the advisory committee for that policy as well. And what's come out of that is the Canadian Sport Policy, which sets the foundation for all government, I would say, it steers the ship in terms of sport for government and non-government actors. What that's permitted the provincial territorial governments in collaboration with us is to focus their efforts on women in sport. So, long answer short, I apologize. Absolutely, those recommendations remain relevant. Have we come far? Sure. Is there a way to go? Absolutely.
Great, thanks. And I will be sharing my time, but I had one more quick question, which is about funding, infrastructure funding. We hear a lot about difficulty, for example, for girls' hockey teams getting access to an arena, that type of thing. And to the extent that federal government is investing and providing infrastructure funding towards different sports facilities, should we be creating any ties to requiring equal access time?
It's a very interesting question. It's something that we're looking at across the board in terms of how far do you go as a government to tie programming requirements to infrastructure investments. And I'm not sure, to be honest, that we've landed on a decision around that. One of the things that we did do in our budget this year was create a dedicated $150 million fund for sport and rec infrastructure reinvestment and refurbishment. And the Federation of Canadian Municipalities identified that the most dilapidated bundle of or type of infrastructure in this country is sport and recreation infrastructure, and identified an incredibly large dollar amount, $9 billion, I would say. Was it $9 billion, Alan? I apologize.
$9 billion deficit.
$9 billion deficit, because there's a reason why our recreation centers and rinks have the word centennial in their name, because that's when a lot of them were built, and they haven't been upgraded since. And so I think that we wanted to make sure that rec and sport facilities got the attention it deserved, and so that to me was a bit of a TSN turning point, to use a sport analogy, in terms of how we're looking at sport and recreation infrastructure. With respect to tying programming requirements to infrastructure investment, we haven't landed on that yet. To be fair, I'd be really interested to hear if that was a recommendation that came out of your report, because that will inform some of the decisions we make. And I don't know if Marie-Geneviève or any of it. I apologize, I didn't introduce my team. I'm sorry. We've got Marie-Geneviève Mounier, we've got Ellen Zimmerman and Sean O'Donnell from Heritage and Sport Canada. They're my officials. Sorry.
On the infrastructure fund, yes. I mean, in terms of Sport Canada's involvement in infrastructure, as you probably know, we're not the experts in that. Any infrastructure funding that has gone to sport and recreation facilities has been through the appropriate departments, Infrastructure Canada, through the RDAs, the regional development agencies. We have been in discussion with them to see how we can improve the infrastructure that's there, how we can reduce the infrastructure deficit that was reported from the Canadian Federation of Municipalities infrastructure report card last January. Going forward, I think we're also looking at ways that accessibility becomes, in broad strokes, but for women and girls as well, becomes part and parcel of infrastructure investments going forward. But I would say that these are early discussions at the official stages right now, and we'll have to continue to work on that.
I'll pass it quickly.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your personal and your political leadership on this issue. I'm interested in your policies on Indigenous people and sport, and I'm referencing the Truth and Reconciliation Committee calls upon the federal government. There's 5 recommendations in the TRC report, calls on the government to amend the Physical Activity and Sport Act to support reconciliation, reduce barriers to the sports participation, increase pursuit of excellence in sport relative to Indigenous people. So we don't have a lot of time, and it's a subject. So I'm wondering if you could comment on that.
So we know, we've taken a whole of government approach to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission reports, and we at Sport Canada have had to tell Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada how we are going to make sure that those 5 that pertain to sport are going to be acted upon. And I don't know if you can, I'm worried of time, I'll babble if I say it. So.
Well, in terms of our view, I mean, look, what do officials do? We create a working group on Aboriginal sport, and we've been working to try and address the recommendations, particularly the 5 that pertain to sport and recreation. And I think we're in the process of developing a framework that looks at leadership. Looking at the Aboriginal Sports Circle, for example. I'm sorry?
Okay, one quick one. North American Indigenous Games, very successful in Winnipeg in 2002, I believe. They're coming up in Toronto, was it?
Toronto, 2017, yeah. That's part of the framework, yes.
Are we involved in that, or
Absolutely.
federal government?
Absolutely. I went there to announce our involvement in it. We take a strong leadership role around the FPT table, around the North American Indigenous Games, and in fact, we may actually be hosting the World Indigenous Games in Toronto. Is that still happening? That was a bit up in the air.
Yeah, it's still up in the air.
Yeah. So
I
absolutely.
think Winnipeg would be interested in that.
Right?
Right, Robert?
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dal. Thank you, Minister. The chair would like to apologize for not noticing Senator Nancy Ruth, so I would like to acknowledge your presence here. Senator, you're so shy and retiring always that I really didn't see you sitting there.
It's a compliment, Hetty.
Thank you. We now go to Mr. Kitchen for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming. I'm going to try again a couple questions. You brought up quickly on the issue of coverage of women in sport outside of the Olympics being, and I think you said 24% was roughly. And interestingly, yesterday I went to lunch and learn at Cause with Ms. DeBrusen, and we sat there and we listened to part of the conversation, and they were referring to taking things off of main channel TV and putting it into the internet, because that's where younger generation is looking at things and following through with that. And we all know and we agree that the reality is we need more role models and female role models to inspire young women to get involved. Have you looked into that? Have you challenged your committee to take a look at that aspect?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. We, in Rio, I had the opportunity to spend some time with both Monsieur Lacroix and with Greg Stremla, who's CBC Sports. And one of the educations I got was just on that, about the alternate platforms that were available to showcase sport, women in sport, Paralympic sport, any kind of sport that maybe not be, on the televisions per se. And I was very intrigued by the idea that television isn't the be-all and end-all that it used to be. And in fact, most young people are engaging and watching sport in very diverse ways, such as on their computers or on their phone or through other social media and internet platforms. The thing that fascinated me was the opportunity that this provides, because in some ways, these platforms are only limited by the content, as opposed to the minutes on a television. And the notion that as long as there was content available, we could have a really robust representation of these groups available for people. What I committed to leaving Rio was actually convening some kind of roundtable or meeting of media people, pardon me, I don't know the language, but people involved in media such as CBC and others to talk about how we can get traditionally underrepresented groups on these other external platforms, because I think it's a huge opportunity for awareness.
Yeah, great, thank you. Now, we do, obviously, getting young girls participating is the main goal here, because we're doing a great job with our high-performance athletes, and we're seeing great results of that, and that's kudos to them and their coaching staff to get them there. And I'll touch on coaching a little bit later if I get a chance, but the Canadian sport policy is calling for basically getting more Canadians participating in, and particular women participating in sport. And in your meeting in June with the provinces and territories, I know there was an express interest in strengthening that participation in that aspect of it. How do you measure those results? How are you going to measure whether someone's actually participating more and we're increasing that level?
Well, I will actually defer to my officials on the actual technical data piece, but yes, to reaffirm that at our FPT meeting, we very clearly sent a message that the participation of women and girls in sport was a huge priority for all levels of government. Can you guys elaborate on the data piece?
Well, the issue of increasing women and girls particularly in sport is very complicated, as you know. In terms of the straight numbers, I mean, we have information on numbers of participants at the national sport level. For example, there's, of the 5.3 million members in national sport organizations, about 1.9 are girls. So we have that kind of basic information, but that's information on the group of young girls, women that like to be in sport. What the challenge is going forward is to figure out how we can entice, if that's the right word, greater participation from those who may not look to sport, physical activity, as something that they want to do themselves. And I'd say in that we're looking to other jurisdictions. The UK in particular has done some really interesting work in that regard with their Girls Can initiative. In fact, we have a representative from the UK over at our research conference that we're running right now to give us insight into that. So I'd say there's still a lot of work to do in that area, and to give a full answer, not there yet.
And I realize there's a lot of work to do, but are you focusing on just putting it out and advertising it, or are you actually focusing on doing something concrete? For example, we've talked a number of times and we've heard from witnesses who've talked about getting that into the school system, getting younger kids where we have gym class now, not health. And as a health practitioner, I agree we need health, but we need gym. We need these young girls and boys, everyone participating in that aspect of it, and getting them to, whether it's we talk about participation, walking a block a day. Well, how about one class of gym or an hour of gym in the schools?
Yeah, and again, one of the challenges for us jurisdictionally, of course, as education is provincial, which does not mean that we can't provide leadership at the federal level, and which doesn't mean that we couldn't make that a priority of our bilateral agreements with the province to give them some financial support to move in that directions. We identified as a group of ministers in June that while we think we've made some inroads with our health colleagues, there's still a disconnect with the education sector at the ministerial level, which doesn't mean we're not trying. It means that when you go to an education minister, Quebec is the only province that has sport and education as in one ministry, which makes it super easy to have those conversations around school sport. Even when I had a chance in Calgary recently to meet with the head of the Canadian School Sport Federations Association, there's this disconnect that we're still trying to work through. That can be very frustrating. But to me, one of the things when my very first interview I did as sport minister, they said, if you could change anything, what would that be? And I said, I'd get daily physical activity back in schools. And so that, to me, of all the things I would change in the system, that would be the number one thing for me.
Okay. Do I have any time left?
Yes, you've got another minute.
Okay, thank you very much. To touch quickly on coaching and getting participation of women, and obviously we all talk, I mean, when I was younger, I coached my daughter, and oftentimes it was very difficult to get women to get involved, and that's where the young girls need that role models. They need their mothers to be there to step up, and so that they can follow through And it's very difficult for them to do that because how do they keep a job? How do they raise a family? How do they deal with all the other things that they're dealing with in a house and then try and coach and then go do their certification and progress on those amendments? Are you looking at that? Are you proposing any ideas on that area?
Yeah, thank you again for the question. We have talked a lot with the Coaching Association of Canada about these very issues, and I've heard from women coaches about the systemic barriers you're talking about in terms of not only do they don't have coaching. The time we need our volunteer coaches is the worst time of the day for women to be able to offer their time, because it's it's the 4 to 8 o'clock at night time when there's a whole bunch of other competing responsibilities that women have still in our society. And what we're talking about is, and then what happens is female coaches don't see other female coaches, so there's no behavior to model. And so it's a cycle. So talking with the Coaches Association about creating those role models that will then trickle down and maybe looking at sport differently. Can we job share a coach's role so that you don't have to do it every week, but two women do the job, and so you can work around your schedules. I mean, there's some, like any kind of flex time job, there's ways that we can do this. We've also had national sport organizations who have brought a female coach as a mentor. So maybe their normal coaching complement is 2 head coaches, but they'll bring a third person who will be a female coach who could then get that mentoring opportunity and then ultimately be the head coach themselves. But changing our systems and programs to incorporate more flexibility for women to be able to participate, absolutely.
Thank you, and I go to Madame Laverdiere for the NDP. 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. And I'm just thinking maybe we should give some training to some spouses, like cooking lessons. And but anyway, the issue of coaching is one, but il y a aussi la question de la.
There's also the issue of decision-making bodies for various sports, and I believe that, unless I'm mistaken, there too women are underrepresented. Is there any way to solve that problem, or at least improve things, in your opinion? Yes, of course. The boards of directors of national sports organizations, there is some representation of women. Is it equal? It's almost equal on the boards of directors nationally, but not at the lower levels. All national organizations have gender parity requirements. That's a requirement of the Government of Canada. But at the community level and the provincial or territorial level, women aren't
at the board tables, aren't at the decision-making bodies as much at the community or provincial level. The women are doing the more administrative roles and the more making sure that schedules are, there's schedules for the teams and uniforms for the teams and managing the teams, but then the selection of the team and the hockey organization is run by men at the community level. And I think that that's a big gap in our leadership model that we need to address. I think that leadership can come from us through the national sport organizations and their provincial members. I think if we had, as a condition of our funding, we could have provincial organizations require that our people we fund, their members, have more equity on their boards. I think that would be a big start.
Merci beaucoup. Un autre enjeu.
Thank you very much. Another issue, and I don't really know what can be done about this, is sponsorships. If I understand correctly, female athletes don't get the same level of sponsorship as their male counterparts. Could you confirm that for me? And is there anything that could be done to offset this? What recommendations would you have? I can confirm that, yes, indeed, women get fewer sponsors in sports than men. In terms of how to improve things, that's very difficult because companies make their own decisions about sponsorship, not us. There is some tension between sponsorships for national organizations and sponsorships for individual athletes. There's the issue of rights holders. So the Olympic Committee will have one bank, and no one else can have that same bank as a sponsor, or any bank for that matter. And same thing for individual athletes. So it actually becomes impossible for other banks to sponsor anyone when a bank has an exclusive arrangement with.
And get sponsored, because there are companies who want to sponsor athletes, but the more innovative ones are smaller and more nimble and younger and can't compete with the big ones who are already funding the Olympic and Paralympic Committee but are stopping these other ones from funding our organizations and our athletes. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on sponsorship.
Thank you.
Oh, you have 3 minutes.
Oh.
Usually I talk longer, sorry.
I usually talk longer too. Generally, what would you think should be our priorities for recommendations in the report?
On women and girls in particular, I would say participation rates, particularly at the teenage level. I think that there's a lot, that gap that our girls, they get involved in sport, they drop out of sport, and it's a real shame because all the benefits, the reasons they drop out of sport are sometimes the benefits they would achieve through sport. We drop out of sport because of body image, because of lack of self-confidence, because of competing, all the challenges you have as a young 13, 14-year-old girl, when all of those same challenges would be heightened by keeping involved in sport. It improves your self-confidence. It helps with your body image. Like, all the benefits from sport are some of the same reasons why we're losing our girls in sport. I also think we have to look at the opportunities we're providing our girls and think of what a 14 to 16-year-old girl today would want to do in sport. May not be the traditional way we've always offered girls for sport. So I think that there's a lot of things we could do. But that would be, for me, the most important piece.
Donc, je pense, je sais pas.
So I don't know if you agree, but there are a lot of issues that go well beyond sports. There are social issues like self-image, self-esteem, partners who don't do their fair share of the work, male partners, that is. So the issues go well beyond strictly sports.
Beliefs is that we can use sport to achieve broader social policy objectives. So if we can find a way to help through sport to help address some of these broader social challenges we face, I think we'll all be better off.
Merci beaucoup.
50 seconds if you wish to use
no,
it.
I'm
That's
done.
fine. Okay, well, thank you very much, Madame Lavillière. And Mr. Regan for the Liberals. 7 minutes.
I'd like to share my time with my colleague Sonia Sidhu, if that's okay.
Fine, yes.
Thank you very much. It's very good.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming here. And I recently met Nandini Sharma, who does sledge hockey. She's a Canadian national women's teams member. In fact, she's playing right now. She lives in my riding, Brampton South. She's a paraplegic with an accident happened in 2010. Is there any recommendation or any exciting provincial program, if you can elaborate that, where we can expand and promote, and that type of girls who are very energetic, they can get some funding and they can move forward more?
Thank you. I think there are definitely examples of really good work that's being done at the provincial level. One of the things I'm doing with my other side of my hat with persons with disabilities, as we consult on our accessibility legislation and we do thematic roundtables on areas, transportation, employment, what have you, one of them is sport and rec. And what we're doing is convening a group of thinkers around how we can use best practices in sport and rec to attract more people with disabilities into sport. What's being done at the provincial levels, how do we get more girls and women, especially girls with acquired disabilities. So if you've had an accident, you weren't born with your disability, but I would say there's a big gap on the acquired disability piece. I think that, Ontario is doing some great work, BC is doing some great work, but it's a huge challenge because, like most systems, the sports system was not designed originally with well, I would probably say women, but at least girls with disabilities were not at the forefront of thinking when we designed our current system. And so we're retrofitting our system to be inclusive of everyone.
Thank you. I can pass time to my colleagues.
Thank you. And thank you for coming here, Minister. I wanted to ask you specifically about some organized sporting events, such as the Gay Games and Seniors Games, that don't seem to fall under, I guess, the framework for federal funding at the moment, because they're neither professional sports nor are they they're the association-driven sports. And I was wondering if there was an opening for them or a possibility in the future that even on a case-by-case basis, events like that might be able to receive some funding.
Yeah, and I think I'll ask these guys to elaborate in a second. But what I would say to that is, yes, that one of the things we're looking at, historically the focus of Sport Canada investment has been on Olympic and Paralympic sport. Then on a case-by-case basis, we may fund extraordinarily the police and firefighter game, or these are mass participation events that achieve a lot of other objectives, but they don't get our high-performance athletes to the Olympics or Paralympic Games. And with that having been the lens, that's where the money has gone. We are right now reviewing our sport funding accountability framework and the criteria in that, and definitely, in addition, we're developing an international sports strategy, which has as a component hosting. One of the components of that hosting piece will be mass participation events that would be the type of event you're talking about that would, bring in a ton of sport tourism revenue, get a ton of people participating in sport, highlight diversity in our country. Those are all really important government objectives. And so we're definitely looking at how we can tweak our current practices and policies to be more inclusive of these really important initiatives.
We've been privileged enough to hear from athletes here at this committee, and much as when we spoke last year at this committee with you, we celebrate how well our female athletes did at Rio, but more than that, the way that they were treated by the media and the way that young girls and their families embrace their performance and were so proud of their performance. And I think it was a bit of a watershed. But one thing that we have definitely learned on this committee is that in no way can we rest on our laurels in this at all, and that the spotlight really shines now on how do we increase that momentum. We heard some fairly gripping testimony from athletes who in the past have experienced sexual harassment within the environment of athleticism, and to as something that you've brought up, the element of coaching is an essential element, and having female coaching and just having an environment where it is friendlier, and therefore allows our athletes to be their best, which is at the end of the day what we want. I wonder, because of your unique point of view, if you could give us some of your personal thoughts on that.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. We need to recognize in sport, but I would say this is broader, that men and women are different, and in order to bring out the best in people, you have to recognize the differences and bring their best out in that through that recognition. And I think, again, we need to, from the start, design our programs and policies through an inclusion and diversity lens, so that it isn't designing something generic and then recognizing that doesn't really work for girls and trying to fix it. It's like being very clear how we, intentionally include everyone from the start as we design our policies and programs. I think, what we're talking about, and it's a challenge, is a culture shift, is a societal change and attitudes, right? Because, I have a 6-year-old daughter and I have a 16-year-old daughter. And my 6-year-old daughter goes on the soccer field and we tell her how great she is, and she's equal to the boys and it's all lovely. But by the time, your girls hit 14, 15, somebody will yell out a comment to a boy, "Oh, you run like a girl." right? Like that's a bad thing. I know some girls who are pretty damn fast, right? So just the idea that somehow, but in that 10 years of a kid's life, they go from having such a positive and confident self-image around their participation in sport to, the culture shift of it's okay, like a slag is that you run like a girl. And how do we, that to me is a really big challenge that we kind of have to face, as a society, but it's how do we when does that become a compliment instead of a slag? And when we're there, that's when we'll know we'll have achieved something.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Regan, Minister. We go to a second round, and I'm looking at the clock, and I think we could go to a 5-minute round like we've sometimes done with 3 participants. So we start with Mr. Maguire for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here today as well. I was most interested in your early comments about facilities and some of the 49-year-old Centennial arenas that we have now around the country. I noticed your comments about the 150 million. I mean, there's the bill that was in the the 150-year funds for next year and a lot of events. But I'm more interested in the Building Canada ideas that I think recreation is now included in that.
Yep.
And wondering what you're doing to emphasize that with your colleagues and cabinet, and the budget will be coming up next spring. How that can be used, how you see it fitting in.
I think those 2 pieces really open the door for important discussion. So first of all, making rec facilities an eligible category of Build Canada infrastructure dollars, and having a modest, I would say, investment through this budget in a dedicated fund for sport and rec infrastructure. I, again, am on this crusade to this whole notion of using sport and rec to achieve broader goals. And one of those is, the big one is in health. So we know that that the health of our country is directly related to the levels of physical activity and sport participation. And, back in the days, the Romano report said you spend $1 in sport, you save 5 in health. You don't have to like sport. That's pretty good math. And I think, you go to Attawapiskat and you ask the youth there what they need and what they want in their community, and the first thing they're right on the list is a rec center. They need a place to gather. They need a place to play. And so I spent a lot of time with my cabinet colleagues suggesting how they can achieve their objectives through either sport and rec or through a sport and rec angle or lens. And I would say rec infrastructure is a huge piece of that, an absolutely huge piece of that. And that's why it's in my mandate letter, is to work on improving the state of our recreational infrastructure across this country.
Thank you. I know I come from a mostly rural area. Half my constituency is the city of Brandon, but the other half is pretty spread out. It's a lot of smaller communities, anywhere from 400 to 500 people to a couple of thousand. And they've taken it upon themselves, some of these areas, use Hartney as an example. 10 years, 12 years ago, they built a small arena. They had a very good record of athletes getting involved in amateur sports and professional sports, but most of it being hockey and baseball. But more so, they ended up with the Westman Wildcats midget hockey team that won the Western Canadian Championships the first year they were in existence. And they wouldn't have had it without the couple of $1 million arena that they put together. A very functional, simple type of an arena, but it worked. And I'm wondering how you would look at fitting, some of those smaller towns. There's been a number of our professional, or more even, of our amateur athletes that have come from a lot of those small areas and rural areas and remote areas even, then they need those types of facilities to...
Yeah, so I think an immediate response is, of course, the Small Communities Infrastructure Fund. So, the other piece, of course, is that, and I would, lobbying is not quite the right word, but, working with provinces and municipalities for them to identify these as priorities in their own communities, right? Because a lot of the relationships we have in infrastructure are driven by what provinces or municipalities identify are their priorities. So if you go into, if the message can get out that if provinces or municipalities identify rec centers as a priority, we will respond to that accordingly. The challenge is, and I hear this all the time from rec center operators and the Canadian Parks and Rec, is it's really hard to compete with wastewater, and there's some fundamental challenges that municipalities face that always take precedence over a rec center. And so that's, again, why we need this dedicated pot for sport and rec infrastructure in order so and I would say rec infrastructure even more than sport and rec, but recreational, multi-purpose, super functional, to your point, it would be a huge win for our country.
And it needs to be there for more than just the athletic part of it. I agree for the health part totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
It's the heart of so many communities.
My colleague.
Well, I have one question.
I'll be very quick.
I'd like to go because you're killing curling rinks in this country. They're being taxed to death by municipalities. I mean, I've sat on many curling boards in this, and I've covered many Briars. That sport is dying because the municipalities are taxing these curling facilities coast to coast to coast, and their cost for hydro, their cost for running has gone skyrocketing, and they're shutting down at an alarming rate. And you talk about participation. Curling is one sport.
Curling is a great sport.
It may be, but I'm going to be honest with you. In 10 years, we may not see it.
Interesting. Well, I wasn't aware that was happening. I'm happy to look into that, but that's a real shame.
Well, I can give you a name in our city of Saskatoon. We're down right now to 4 curling clubs. We once had 7.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Waugh. Mr. Sampson?
Thank you. I'll be sharing my time with Mrs. de Brusen. I'll have one quick question, however. Bonjour, Madame la Ministre,
Bonjour.
puis votre équipe, Madame.
Good morning, Minister. Thanks for being here. I'd like to say something a little more personal. We heard some witnesses who said that their girls were quitting sports around 12, 13, 14, 6 times more than boys. But you didn't quit. So I want to know, what did you do? What kept you in sports? And secondly, is your 16-year-old daughter still involved in sports? What's your recipe for success?
Second one quickly. No, my 16-year-old daughter is not in sport. And she was, and she moved on. Now, to be fair, she's a very artsy child. She's in band and music and drama and theater and what have you, so she's gone with the arts. But she didn't find a place in sport, and that's a huge problem. In terms of my own experience, I, at that point in my life, was lucky enough to find Paralympic sport, which is probably, if I'd have stayed in mainstream sport, I probably wouldn't have stayed in sport. But because I happened to be exposed to Paralympic sport, which addressed my kind of unique needs in sport through their system, I stayed involved in sport and flourished. But I can't guarantee you that if I'd have just stayed in mainstream sport, I would have continued either. I would hope. I'm pretty active and pretty sporty and pretty competitive, so probably. But I don't know if it would have been because of the system. It may have been despite the system.
Merci.
Well, thank you. We've been talking about women and girls a lot, and it's a gendered discussion that we're having. But one of the questions that I had for you is about our transgender populations, and how do we make sure that people who are transgender also feel included within our sports system and have opportunities? Is there something that our government is doing on that?
Yeah, I thank you for that question. It's a really important part of this issue. We have, and I'll let I keep saying that and then I never actually let them talk. I'm sorry. I'll let these guys talk and then I don't. We have been working with the Canadian Association for the Advancement of Women in Sport, with the Canadian Inter-University Sport on creating policies around transgender and participation in sport. There have been quite a few human rights cases, particularly in inter-university sport, that have highlighted the need for some kind of systemic change in this area. And, right now I think we're at the working group policy development stage. Am I fair if we move beyond that? Because that's where I lost.
Yeah.
Alan?
Well, I mean, say in general, we're an advocate for for sport that's fair, safe, and open for all. So that's the underpinning. We ask our organizations as part of their funding agreements to ensure that they have policies in place that make sure that sport is fair and equitable, again, for all populations. The issue of transgender participation in sport has flared up from time to time, and most recently with work that and decisions that have been made at the International Olympic Committee level, it's created that issue again. We through the Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport, excuse me, they developed a new policy guideline entitled "Creating Inclusive Environments for Trans Participants in Canadian Sport: A Guidance for Sport Organizations." Now, Sport Canada participated in the development of that guidance, and that's what it is. It's a guidance to sport organizations, and it's been provided to all sport organizations. So this was developed through extensive consultation, and as I say, it's now been provided to the organizations. That's about where we're at with this now. It's an issue that's there, and we've tried to address it in this way.
Right. Do I have time?
Under a minute.
Awesome. Because the other part of that I was concerned about when I saw Olympic coverage this year was there was a lot of question about gender testing and the fact, that if a woman had a certain amount of testosterone, there were a lot of questions about her ability to access sports. And we don't do the same kind of testing on men. There isn't a whole lot of testing that happens in the Olympics about whether a person qualifies to be a man in that same way. I'm wondering, how are we working with the Olympic Committee on that question about gender testing?
Yeah, and I think the phrase now is gender verification, which is a little softer than that. And many organizations have gender verification policies. The IOC doesn't. They don't regularly conduct testing, but athletes do have what's called a biological passport, which basically, at some point in their life, if they've had this very inappropriate test, that they will not be subjected to it again. But the idea that gender verification is alive and well is of concern, and the IOC has taken a step back in terms of their aggressive pursuit of this as a systemic policy. But it is still, I wouldn't say rampant, but it still goes on, at least at the visual level, very directly. And athlete protests are filed on these grounds, and I know it's of concern for this Canadian Centre for Ethics in Sport. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add. No. That's good. Perfect.
Yes. And now we go to Madame Sanssouci.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to say hi to all the committee members. I'm sorry, Madam Minister, I didn't have the opportunity to hear your presentation, but I do have a question. As a representative of a predominantly rural riding, I would say that what you said about rec centers is highly appreciated where I come from, because those are often at the very heart of the social and community life. They're very important. Rec centers are very hard for smaller places to keep up and meet the needs and expectations of their residents. My question is quite different. I'd like to draw a parallel with another issue that this committee studied last year, and perhaps you can tell me whether there is any parallel to be drawn. We did a study on dance. We looked at an artist's or a dancer's cycle, their life cycle, and how often at the end of their dancing career there's very little to help them rejoin civilian life, so to speak. Would you say that that's an issue that is similar for female athletes? Yes, in my view, there are 3 stages in an athlete's career. There's the introduction, there's the high performance stage, and then the sort of after that. So when you win your medals, you go to university, and then you want to return to normal life after competition, so to speak. We do a lot of work with national organizations on that very point, because that's an issue that athletes have identified as being very important to them. What do you do after you've won your medals? what do you do when you want to resume a normal daily life? So yes, there is that parallel with dance. Yes, I also see a parallel with another issue we talked about, which is teenage girls dropping out. I have 4 kids, and often when you hit your teenage years, you either become part of the elite or you drop out. And I was just wondering whether that's an age where teenagers are trying to make decisions about careers and professional paths. So if there's an additional difficulty if you do go into sports, what happens when your career comes to an end? How do you fit back into normal life? If there's very little in the way of role models for athletes, there's lots of models for professions and could that be another reason why teenage girls drop out of sports, because they're really not sure how they would fit back into regular life afterwards? Yes, absolutely. As soon as people realize they're not going to make the NHL, they drop out of the sport. So I think we need to give young people recreational opportunities so that they can stick with sports, maybe not at the highest possible performance levels, but at least to stay involved. This should be a way of living, a way of life. It shouldn't just be all or nothing. Either you're a professional athlete or you do something else for your career. We should see sports as something that's ongoing, that's part of our lifestyle. This is a cultural shift that we need. In Australia, sporting and sports are part of their general culture. It's what you do on Saturdays. You go and play sports together, but we're not quite there yet in Canada. Well, I think it's important to make sure that it's not all about competition. There's a lifestyle component, that sports can be something more than just competitive, something that you keep up throughout your life. Of course, younger people have higher energy levels, but I think it's important to try to get the message out there that sports are a way of life. There's a competitive dimension for those who want to become part of the high performance elite, but there should also be opportunities for those who just simply enjoy physical activity and sports for their own sake. Yes, I think as we discussed, there are various stages in the life of an athlete. There's active start, and then it should wind up with active for life. So that's what Sports Canada is trying to emphasize, is other dimensions to sports, not just the high performance. We need to put more emphasis on active start and active for life. It's a continuum. I think we need to make sure that all stages are emphasized, both the start and the ongoing active for life. That's all I had. Thank you.
I want to thank my colleagues for being such very strong participants. And so I will ask us to just recess for a few minutes until we move into the second hour of questioning. Thank you again.
And thank you very much for having me here today.
session, please, an extra hour. We have with us some real superstars here. We have Madame Lenny Marchand, who I gather is the fastest runner in Canada, if not globally. And we have Amanda Boujol, who is with Boxing Canada, an athlete. And so she's by video conference from Kitchener, Ontario. And they are presenting as individuals on this issue. And so what I will do is I will start with Madame Boujol. You have 10 minutes to present what you want to say. You could do less than 10 minutes if you wish. And then we will have an interactive question and answer. You will ask 10 minutes, Madame Marchand can do 10 minutes, and then we will begin the interactive piece. So will you begin, Madame Boujol?
Sure. First off, I just want to thank you for having me a part of this committee. I'm really excited to be here and hopefully share some of my experiences with all of you. So I have been on the Canadian national boxing team for the past 12 years. So I have traveled to provincial, national, international competitions, as well as 4 major games. So I think for me, my sport experience might be a little bit different than most other Olympians. I think I started boxing much later in life, so I didn't come from a family that was really sport-oriented, but my parents did see some sort of desire to still put us in sports. So when I was younger, my parents would put me in things like baton twirling and rhythmic gymnastics, and I think I went to those sports and I wasn't really good at them, and it wasn't something that I really enjoyed, so I just automatically assumed that I was not an athlete. So it wasn't until later in life when I followed my brother to a boxing club that I fell in love with a sport. So I think even going through high school, after grade 10, when gym class was no longer mandatory, I no longer took gym class. So finding this sport of boxing, I think, is what actually got me interested. And initially it was just for fitness, and I think I just had the right mentors and coaches around me that taught me the sport the way in a way that helped me really develop and become comfortable with this sport. And then when I took the decision to compete, that decision was on me, and it was my decision to get in there and take it to another level. So since then, obviously, I have been very involved in sport. I've also become a coach. I've also become a referee and judge, and sat on other panels and different boards representing women in sports. So for me, I have a love for sport, and if there's some way that I can encourage the younger generation to get involved and to pick up any sport, I take every opportunity to do that. I'm involved in a few other organizations, True Sport, Fast and Female, which you've probably heard of, and I try to take every opportunity to go to schools and do different presentations to try to get our community more active. So I think that's a really, really important thing. I think Canada has come a long way, even from when I initially started competing to now, but I do believe that there is a lot more that can be done to increase the interest for young girls and for women in sport, coaching, and all of the above. So if there's anything that I can share, then I would be more than happy to.
Well, thank you very much, Madame Boujol. I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions for you. Ms. Marchand, please begin.
Yes, my name's Lanny Marchand. I'm a 2016 Olympian in the 10,000 meter and marathon this past summer. I'm the Canadian record holder in the marathon, the half marathon. I'm a graduate of the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law, Michigan State College of Law. I'm a practicing attorney in Tennessee, and I'm licensed and admitted to both the state and federal bars. I'm here today to speak on my experience as an athlete in Canada, as a female athlete in Canada for that matter. As we've heard earlier this morning, we're getting close to having more representation, almost equal representation of our youth and our women at all levels of sport. When I contacted Athletics Canada, they told me that we have almost equal representation of boys and girls, men and women registering with different facets through Athletics Canada. We have gender equality in our national cross-country program now, so men and women will compete over the same distances. As we saw this summer, our women's teams across the board were a force to be reckoned with. And I think perhaps to an outsider it appears that we have gender neutrality in Canada. And based on my experiences, however, I have to say that's not necessarily true. Looks can be deceiving. I came into this sport late. I actually kind of had my appearance on the scene in 2012 when I was just missed out making the Olympic team that year. At the time, Athletics Canada didn't see me as a rising star. Though I was well under the Olympic marathon standard, I was not selected to represent Canada at the London Olympics. We had zero representation in the women's marathon and 10,000 meters runs that year. Since 2012, I've set our national record in the marathon and half marathon, and I've made every international team I've set out to make. The problem is that they keep moving the goalpost. Most recently, our 2016 Olympic and our 2017 World Qualifying marks have been substantially lowered in the women's marathon and 10,000 meters, where our male counterparts see little to no reduction in the qualifying marks that they're supposed to meet. This summer, Krista Duchesne and I were the first women to line up in Canada in the women's marathon since 1996. That's 20 years. We've spoke about how high-performance athletes are meant to inspire. The funding we receive is meant to improve enrollment and encourage participation throughout high school and post-collegiate levels, the period when we're most likely to lose young girls in the sporting world. I question how this initiative will be met if it's another 20 years before we see Canadian women running in the Olympic Forum. In preparation for this summer's Olympics, I once again found myself in the crosshairs with the High Performance Division of Athletics Canada. I promise I don't like poking bears. I had qualified for 2 events, but the ability for me to double came under scrutiny. My being vocal about wanting to double brought along the threat of a sanction against me. It was during those 6 weeks of limbo that my perspective switched. What started out as a selfish endeavor, I wanted to go to the Olympics, I wanted to do 2 events, became something different, and it took on a whole new purpose for me. I was battling Athletics Canada for 2 spots I rightfully earned on the team, but it wasn't just my right I was fighting for. Canadians spoke up and voiced their desire to see me compete in both events, not because I was a medal contender, not because it would be nice of Athletics Canada to let this little girl run, but because they wanted women and girls in their lives to see a strong Canadian female competing for Canada. In my mind, I was no longer asking for permission for myself. I was demanding it for all of us. There's very little understanding of the development of a female distance runner in Canada, and that age does not necessarily dictate results. The funding of athletes like myself, over 30 and female, often comes with performance requirements that are not set on younger athletes or equally on our male counterparts. I will likely not be funded in 2017 after being on the 2016 Olympic team. Our current government stated a goal of gender parity in Parliament. We haven't seen that in sport in Canada yet. High-performance directors, head coaches, CEOs, and other title positions within sport federations, the COC, and Sport Canada are still predominantly male. After what our female athletes achieved in Rio, there is now a greater expectation to see us reflected in the governing bodies and agencies of sport in Canada. The issue here is not just about participation numbers or female representation as athletes or sporting reps, however. We expect our teammates to have our backs, not to comment on our backsides. We do not need men in the sporting world to proclaim that they stand behind us as feminists, because it puts you in the perfect position to comment on our behinds. Instead, we want you to stand beside us. Recently, I was running with an Olympic teammate, a man. We were passed from behind by a cyclist who recognized me and congratulated me on my performances in Rio. My running companion immediately commented that the cyclist clearly recognized me by my behind. I'm one of the fastest distance runners in Canada, male or female. I have a very distinct running stride. I was probably the only woman in Toronto running at that pace at that time. But my teammate decided to minimize and dismiss the compliment I had received and tie it to my body. I don't pretend to know his intent behind his words, but I have come to learn that it's not the intent of our words that always matter, it's their effect. We look at action over intent. If we'd like to see actual change in high-performance women's sport in Canada, we need entities like the COC and Sport Canada to step in when a policy or criteria is issued and places a higher burden on women. If you, our government, wants to see women continue to develop in sport and see our female population living healthy and active lifestyles, there needs to be checks and balances on our federations. Sport Canada and the COC cannot turn a blind eye and say the conflict is solely between the athlete and her federation. If we want to see continued change and growth in women in sport, it needs to happen on all levels. Our teammates need to see us and treat us as equals. Our governing bodies and administrators need to understand our development. We still have a very relatively short history between women in sport in Canada and worldwide. We need to see ourselves as equals and stop asking for permission. I'm done asking for permission to be seen as an equal, on or off the field. And I think we're starting to see that women in sport are demanding it as well. And thank you.
Very much. We go to our order of questioning, beginning with Mr. Van Daal. For 7 minutes, please.
Yes. Thank you very much. First of all, my deepest respect to both of you. I really I did compete when I was a younger man in boxing, actually, and I've jogged, run for most of my life, and I know how difficult it is. So I have the utmost respect to reach the levels that you have reached. My first question is to Mandy Bugeaud. You mentioned that when you were younger, you competed but weren't really interested. You dropped out. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
So yeah, when I was younger, I never really considered myself an athlete. So, I mean, like most parents, my parents would try to put me in different sports. And I think the sports that they chose were kind of like, you know, a typical sport for a girl. So, you know, baton twirling or rhythmic gymnastics. And I think I just didn't enjoy those sport experiences. Maybe it wasn't I wasn't flexible, or I wasn't good at those sports. So I think in my mind, I just wrote off the fact that I was not an athlete. I just assumed there's some people that are athletes. If you're an athlete, you should be good at every sport, and I just wasn't good at these sports that I tried. So I just automatically wrote off, I'm not an athlete. I never really gave much thought to any other sport. So it wasn't until I had the opportunity to try boxing, and that was because my brother got involved in it, and I kind of saw what he was doing, and I had an interest.
And your approximate age at the time that you went into the boxing club?
16.
16? Good. Having been in many clubs, I know that there's a wide array of characters in there. What sort of response did you receive, or did you ever get any disparaging remarks because you were a woman? Just generally,
yes.
What was the atmosphere like?
I'm going to be honest, it was very intimidating. Initially, when I first went to the boxing club, I actually asked a friend to come with me because I knew that there wasn't a lot of girls in the boxing club. And I guess I knew this mostly because my brother actually didn't want me to come to the club with him. So I actually had to wait till he quit boxing before I had my opportunity to go. So when he quit, I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I asked one of my friends to come. And initially, it was intimidating. You know, you have to keep up with the guys. It's not girls and guys. You're an athlete when you're in the boxing gym. But there was definitely coaches that didn't like, you know, females in the gym. There was, I remember a few times, you know, being in the ring sparring and actually just being kicked out of the ring for no reason. And later they came and told me that it was because they just didn't know how to talk to female athletes or how to handle them in the boxing gym. So I think a lot of that has changed now. I think you see women or female boxing throughout Canada, but initially, you know, even before we were an Olympic sport, it was difficult, and there was a lot of, you know, you shouldn't box, you're too pretty to box, or, you know, why would you come into a boxing gym? So it was tough, but it was something that I really enjoyed and I wanted to do. So,
a couple of questions. Did you, at the time, were you actually sparring with men or with boys, or did you exclusively spar with women?
No, we sparred with both.
And certainly the coaching you must have made a connection with a good coach who was inspirational to you at one point.
Yes, so initially I had a very good coach that was working with me and taught me a lot of the basics. But I will be honest, at the very beginning, I didn't want to get into the ring. I just wanted to learn the sport of boxing for fitness. And it wasn't until about a year of training where I actually wanted to get in and spar, because the coaches used to always ask me, and I would make excuses like I had a headache that day, I forgot my mouthpiece, whatever it was, to get out of sparring. But then when coaches actually took the time to teach me properly and learn proper defense and learn the skills behind it, then I just created this love for the sport, and then I wanted to be the one getting in the ring.
Did role models play a role, or were role models inspirational to you to box, either female or male?
So there were a few people in particular that I do remember seeing in the boxing gym. I do remember seeing this one girl who was on a provincial team training, and I saw her, sparring with the guys, and I remember looking at her and thinking, like, that is so cool. I want to be that girl. I also there was a national team athlete who actually was going into the coaching side of things, who was coaching me on the side and, doing some running and teaching me more about being an athlete, because like I said, I didn't know anything about running, weightlifting, or whatever. So she was kind of giving me her insights into that. So it definitely played a big role for me.
Thank you, Mandy. Final question for Lanny. You at one point mentioned they keep moving the goalposts. Mm-hmm. Could you reiterate what exactly you meant by that? And there's only about a minute and a half left.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, before Krista and I, we hadn't had women run the marathon since 1996. That's not to say we haven't had women who were competitive by the IOC and IAAF standard. It's just Canada kept setting the standard faster. And then in 2012, I missed the team. So did Krista. In 2013, we both made the World Championship team with a slightly relaxed standard. So it gave us the opportunity to compete on the world scene. And then since then, I've made other teams. We saw with the 2016 Olympic criteria, we were right back where we started in 2012. So to make these teams, and everyone's celebrated what Chris and I have accomplished in women's running, and I've become a role model, whether I set out to or not. And I've inspired all these girls, and we have so many marathoners coming up that are, late 20s, early 30s, that could make these teams. But Athletics Canada came back and set the goalpost back to 29:50. Faster than 2012. And then we competed in Rio, we performed really well, and then 2017 comes along and our standards come out and they're back fast again. The goal is to inspire, and if the new movement here is to inspire girls and to have representation, have athletes like me be these role models, well, they're going to see us out there competing. Krista and I are the only two women in the country who can run these qualifying times. We're the only two women in the country that have been able to do it since 1996. When I set the record, it was a 28-year-old record at the time. So if you want women to participate, if you want young girls to think they can go and compete at the Olympics, whether it's in running or other events or other sports, you have to stop setting standards that eliminate us, that take your top women out. And that's what I mean by them moving the goalposts back.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kitchen for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for coming, and thank you for being great Canadian ambassadors in the Rio Olympics, and a job well done. I'm going to ask you both this question, and hopefully you can, I'm going to ask you to reflect back to when you were in your teens, or even before that. And part of what we've been studying here is participation, how we're going to get women and girls involved in sport. And how do we encourage them to continue to participate in sport as they grow and as they age and as they mature. And we want to find ways of doing it. I'm just asking if both of you could think back to that and maybe give us just a very quick answer as to what were you thinking and what was going through your mind at that time as to why you didn't want to participate in sport or why you did. As you mentioned, Mandy, you said that your parents sort of got you involved with probably maybe less traditional sporting type events, but activities. So just would you mind doing that? I'll ask Mandy to go first.
Sure. I think at that age where a lot of girls are dropping out of sports, sometimes I think that it could actually be from, your bodies are changing. Sometimes maybe you're good at a sport when you're a lot younger, and as you get a little older, maybe you're not so good at that sport, so then you just kind of drop out of sport. I think there are a lot of things that can be done. I think for me, I didn't find that sport that was interesting for me, but maybe there needs to be an option out there for just training and keeping girls active. I was at a event the other day with a group called Aviva, and there was a group that showed up, and they were called GIFT, Girls in Fitness Training, and they were explaining to me that if a girl is not in a specific sport, where do they go? There's nowhere for them to go. There's a YMCA, I think, is the only option really around for young girls. So I think this actual organization was really neat to me because it was introducing girls to different sports just about every week, different fitness training. Or I think if girls are fit, they're active, they're more likely to get involved in sport because they're going to be more confident, and they're just going to get out there and try different things. And I think that's going to increase our participation in sport.
Thank you, Lanny. Lanny. Thank you, Mandy.
I actually started out in sport as a figure skater, so I was very much the pretty little girl in the pretty little box, and I skated up until I was about 15 or 16. I transitioned into running because I liked running. You crossed the finish line, you knew where you stood. You knew if you won, you knew if you didn't. It didn't matter what you looked like crossing the finish line, and I think that's a message that obviously it spoke to me, and I think that's something that needs to speak to other women and other girls in sport. Is it's not how we look doing what we're doing. I spoke before the Olympics about what I do is fierce and sexy, not how I look doing it. And I think what we've seen in mainstream media and even from some of our title sponsors, it's the attractiveness of a female athlete. It's what our bodies look like in an attractive way. By all means, if you want to comment on my behind, comment on it because of its muscular way it's built. If an athlete has broad shoulders and muscular arms, it doesn't make her any less feminine. And I think when you're a teenager and your body's transitioning, and I saw it very much in a figure skating world to a running world, we don't want our bodies commented on. You see us all start putting on bigger clothes and hiding our bodies. So until the sporting world learns how to connect and come forward and comment on us as strong people and not necessarily try to put us in pretty little boxes, I think that's where we're losing girls, is our bodies are ours. We're really shy and awkward at that age. And in my mind, I wanted something where you couldn't comment on my body, you could comment on my performance.
Right. And thank you for that. I'm a rugby player. And oftentimes, I've coached women's rugby, and, one of the things that I've found that sometimes, particularly in rugby, young women that are participating in it are said, you're just a butch. And it actually comes from women to them and their peers that are saying that to you. How do we change that so that it's, Grant, I understand your comments and when a man does that, but how do we stop it from women saying it to their same, and part of it is they need to recognize that they need to be active as well, but how do we stop that?
Girls are mean. Like we're harder on ourselves than any guy or any man's ever gonna be on us. But I think it's addressing it across the board. I think if we stop having men comment on our behinds and take away and be dismissive of what we've accomplished because of how we look, women will learn to stop picking at each other as well. I think more women like Mandy and myself, if we speak up and say, talk to me about being an athlete. I'm an athlete first when I'm competing. I'm a woman second, and I've always said that. And I very much believe it. And it's a matter of getting into the schools and teaching girls that our self-esteem doesn't come from putting each other down. And I think it's how we've been raised. It's how the men around us have been raised as well. Like you knock somebody down to build yourself up, whether it's about gender or whether it's within gender. We've talked about transgender. If it's different, we comment, and if we want to make ourselves feel better, we comment in a negative way. And I think it's getting at the ground root and building up, gender or not gender-wise.
Thank you, Mandy. Mandy, you indicated to us that you're coaching now. What challenges have you had in trying to accomplish coaching as well as your life and your job and your social life and getting your certification levels?
So I actually took my certification levels kind of throughout my career. I've continued to do like some coaching on the side, and actually a lot of the coaching that I did, like I do some corporate events in Toronto now where, you know, I'm taking just people in the ad and media industry and coaching them in boxing. So I'm doing that type of coaching more or less, or else I'm going into schools and I'm just introducing people to the sport. So it is very difficult. I think a lot of people always ask, like, okay, once you're fully retired, are you going to be a coach? And honestly, I think my answer is no, because I want to go out there and I want to, you know, coach young girls and athletes, but there's really there's no initiatives out there for females who are, you know, in a sport and to transition over to the coaching aspect. And for me, I've been through I've gone through a couple different coaches, and one coach in particular, he just was a full-time employee somewhere else. He was, you know, a part-time coach. He had a family, and I was always in the gym alone, and I didn't really have the attention that I needed at that time. So that was really hard on me, and I think if I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to do it 100%. I'm going to be there for my athlete, and I know that, you know, after dedicating my entire life to being an athlete, I'm not sure if I want to dedicate my entire life to being a coach and going through the same struggle of, you know, not having funding or whatever it is to be a full-time coach. So I think that is very difficult, but I do think that's something that we need to work on to keep our athletes somehow in the program, whether it be a coach, a board member, or otherwise.
Thank you both for being role models.
Thank you very much. Madame Sanssouci.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je remercie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank both witnesses for their presentations. You shared with us, both of you, your goals for greater involvement of women and girls in sports. I wonder if you have any suggestions for this committee about federal programs. What would you recommend to improve those programs in various ways, depending on your various sports or interests, whether it's sports, life balance, role models, the transition to becoming a coach, and so on? Maybe we could start with Ms. Bujold, or Ms. Marchant, rather. With respect to federal programs, what would you recommend?
The biggest issue that we're facing still is funding. We have funding through Sport Canada. We have our private sponsors as athletes we seek out. But in terms of programs and initiatives, from the federal standpoint, it seems very much like the money's going into a lot of talk. When I commented earlier that it's not the intent behind our words, it's the effect. It's not the intent behind what we're going to say we're going to do. It's action, and I think I'm very fortunate. I'm very happy to be here speaking on this matter. But if we're just going to sit around and talk about it, then I don't understand what we're going to accomplish. As a female that I went through university, I went through law school. Nobody ever really told me that I could have. We're told as women we can have it all. We can be professional women. We can be a mom. We can have hobbies. We can work out. Nobody really told me it was okay to accomplish all those and then walk away and be a professional athlete. I think for young girls and women, we're not the same as boys. If a guy is halfway decent at hockey, he's going to go all the way and try and make the NHL. I saw with my collegiate teammates, it was perfectly acceptable for them to graduate, not pursue a secondary degree, and live in a house and live like frat boys trying to make it on the running scene. It's not been told to us as girls the same way it has been to boys that it's okay to pursue sport and that you are just as successful as a female doing that. I'm very fortunate. I'm very glad I have my degrees, but nobody told me I didn't have to do it that way. And I think if the federal government wanted to start sending out that message, that success it can come through sport, because it's through sport that we end up with some great coaches, and we end up with our Minister of Sport here. She said herself, like she participated in this initiative years ago, and it kind of introduced her to politics. So we have a lot of female athletes out there that could turn into future ministers and future professionals, but the pressure doesn't need to be on us to be that first.
Merci. Est-ce que vous avez quelque chose à ajouter, Madame Bugeaud?
Ms. Bugeaud, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I would agree 100% with Lanny. I think that the government should also be using the current Canadian national athletes that we have. We have so many amazing, strong female role models in this country that can impact the community. So maybe we need to get them out there more, doing more initiatives with young girls, or just spreading the message even more than we are. And I think funding would go a long way in making that happen. I think right now as athletes we struggle on a day-to-day basis to be a full-time athlete. So we have to do things like get an education and go out and try to work and make it work so that we can actually compete for Canada. So I think if there was a way that funding was increased, would help us so that we don't have to be out applying for grants and trying to do all those things. We can actually give back to the community and try to encourage the next generation to be out there and get involved in sport to make a healthier contribution to this country. I see other programs like in our schools in Ontario, we have to do 40 hours of volunteer. That's amazing. It gets people out there and volunteering, but maybe there's some way we can introduce a physical activity component into that. Maybe we do 10 hours of physical activity or whatever it may be to just get more people interested in focusing more on physical activity and sport.
Madame Marchand, vous avez soulevé.
Ms. Marchand, you mentioned how few women there are in leadership roles, be it as coaches or on the executive of sports organizations, and you said something needs to be done, but how?
Well, what my experiences have been, I've been privy to conversations where, yes, the jobs might be opened up to men and women equally, but then I've overheard conversations where, well, if we give the job to her, we can pay her less. So I think we're still dealing with wage gaps and wage issues to get these roles. I know I went to school in the NCAA system. I went to UT Chattanooga. UT Knoxville, everybody knows, is the big university in Tennessee. Their women's basketball coach was making pennies comparative to what the men's coach was, and her team was winning NCAA title after NCAA title. I think that's paralleled often in our sporting environments here in Canada, whether it's basic level coaches, if it's a volunteer basis but they're given a bit of a grant or funding, it might be higher if it's a male coach. You look at the title positions in Athletics Canada, Equestrian Canada, Canoe Kayak Canada. When these jobs come up, I'll admit I haven't seen the postings, but I often wonder if they are posted or if they're posted equally where women are going to see that these jobs are available when the spots come to be filled. It seems very much like we hire within our own, and because it's been so male-dominated, we keep hiring men. I think we need to cast a wider net.
J'ai encore un peu de temps. Vous avez dit.
Ms. Marchand, you said that your funding will come to an end in 2017. So it's harder for women to get sponsors in sports. Why is that?
By my Sport Canada funding, my carding will likely end. The list actually will be out tomorrow, so I can't comment directly. But I was given a restriction on my funding this past year that I had, and it was the restrictions were only given to those athletes that were over 30, and the majority of those athletes were women, that we had to perform on a certain basis at the Olympics to be eligible for funding going forward. It doesn't matter that my age puts me perfectly in the window to be a finalist in the 2020 Olympics. It doesn't matter that I'll stay in the sport another 4 years. As a woman over 30, I had to perform. I had to be top 15 in the 10,000 in Rio to be eligible for funding going forward. I was 25th. And then I turned around 2 days later and was 24th on the marathon. And that doesn't warrant anything. In terms of private sponsorships, it is more difficult for women, and I don't have a good answer why. I know that I'm a very, very vocal Canadian runner in Canada. I'm sponsored by ASICS Canada, but I know that my ASICS male teammates make more than me. And again, I don't know if it's because our history in sport has been so short that the companies don't necessarily buy in to what we're selling. But I know that when I've hosted community runs, 20 people will show up and they all have a brand new pair of ASICS shoes on their feet. So I know that I have that power to reach people, and I know that my background with education, my background with coming from a large family with a single mother, like I have an interesting story, and we have so many women with these amazing, interesting stories, but the companies are still looking for the Wheaties box, and typically on Wheaties box we have men.
Thank you. And Mr. Sampson?
Thank you very much. I have to say that I'm very impressed. We have with us two Rio athletes, and I don't know if you knew each other there or if you met there or whatnot, but it's very nice to see both of you having competed. And there's no question that the girls in sports, women in sport, with the successes of the last Olympics is going to be something special, I think, that we're going to build on. So I think there's momentum, and we need to build on that momentum. I guess I'd start off with the first question with Mandy about, are you seeing some or as much or more young girls now in boxing? Back in the ring?
You know what? Actually, I think worldwide we're seeing more, but in Canada we're seeing less. And I think when I first started in boxing, we had really, really strong senior teams, junior teams, and youth teams. And then we thought at when the Olympics happened, that would increase, but it increased, I think, more on the fitness side of things. There's more people getting involved and knowing about women's boxing. But as far as getting involved, I think the rest of the world kind of caught up. We were always, top 3 at a world championships for our senior women's team, and the rest of the world just started to catch up, and we didn't do what we need to do to stay there. So now we have trouble filling our junior and our youth teams with I actually don't even have full junior and youth women's teams. And all over the world, our international committee has actually put in place continental championships, world championships, so these girls have the opportunity to get the experience that I never had the opportunity to get. So Canada's falling behind because we're not developing these young girls. So when they get to the senior level, they're already so far behind all the other countries over in Europe and Asia that it's just too hard to compete at this international level.
Quickly, for both of you, if you can comment, do you believe that the coverage is well balanced between men and women in events? Like at the Olympics, what would you say, or any other national competition that you participated in? We'll start with Lenny.
I would have to say no. I think our women's team did very well in Rio, so we received a lot of attention for that because they were doing so well. I think in the events where there weren't medal contenders or medal hopefuls or medal winners, the coverage was lacking. And I think, as someone who spends a lot of time in the U.S., I'll say the Canadian coverage is fantastic. We cover way more than what you'll see in other countries. But yeah, when there was coverage on the women too, we also dealt with the comments on our bodies and our appearances and what our lives are like outside of sport. And so I would have to say no. I would have to say that if we had had a less successful women's team, we probably wouldn't be praising the media coverage that we had.
Good point. Mandy?
I absolutely agree. I think someone did a bit of a research recently on, what female athletes are asked in interviews versus what a male athlete, and it's actually kind of funny to watch just the questions. When Jeannie Bouchard wins a match, it's not about, oh, how did you perform in that match? It's, oh, what are you wearing, or what skirt is that, or can you do a twirl for us? I think, sure, we're getting media coverage more and more, but it's, I think, for the wrong reasons. So I think that's something that we have to go out there and we have to show that, we can be strong and beautiful, but we are are here to compete, and I want to be respected for what I'm doing in my sport. Number one for all media.
Okay, and just the last question, Lenny, you made the point about funding after over 30, and I find that very sad when you think that it's about times, it's not about age. And so we'll take note of that, of course, in our report, but also I think that athletes should be writing to the Federation and as a group and indicating that's unacceptable in my opinion.
Yes, and in a perfect world that would work. But as I mentioned, being vocal about my desire to double at this past Olympics, I was sent a threat of a sanction. You're asking, and that's where we're here to speak to you, that you need to come in on our behalf. The COC and Sport Canada need to come in on our behalf, because when it's the athlete versus the federation and everybody else looks the other way, it's the athlete that faces retribution and retaliation.
Good, we got that in our report. Thank you. I don't know if you want to.
You do have 2 minutes if you wish.
I want Julie to have a couple
All right,
of questions.
but I'm going to have to cut Julie off because we're cutting down time if we haven't won a second round. So, Julie, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome. I wanted to stay on the part about media coverage, because that's something that we're going to be looking at a bit more carefully as well. And yesterday I was at the same speech, same lunch and learn about women in sports. And one of the comments that was made was that different stations have difficulty putting women's sports on because they don't have a high enough viewership. And so that was one of the comments that was made. I'm putting it out there because one of the things that they said was, or one of the commenters said is, we need stories. That we need to have all those stories about the female athletes to help sell sports. And so I was wondering what your thoughts are about that, because that's an issue that keeps coming up, is getting more representation of women in sports.
If you don't put us on TV, there's not going to be more viewership. Like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't see us and there are some men in athletics that have some great stories, but you don't have to seek out those stories to make those men great athletes. And yes, like I commented, there's so many amazing women with so many strong, amazing backgrounds and stories, but we're athletes. So you can't argue there's no viewership if there's no channels that are showing us.
Right. And Ms. Bujold, did you have anything to add to that?
No, 100%. I think the more that they show, female sports or women in sport, the more viewership we're going to get. I think we have to get out there. Yeah, sharing a story can be important, especially like around the Olympics, where we're trying to get to know athletes that we don't already know, and we want to get them out there. But we have to show it as much as we can, and then people will start watching and think, oh, this is cool. Like you see the women's rugby sevens, they've gotten, a lot of media attention and a lot of praise for how amazing they are as athletes. And I think that the more that people see them, the more that there's going to be an interest in going out and watching them live or watching them on TV.
Do you see a link between the media coverage that you have and the sponsorship opportunities that you get?
A little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. Do you want to elaborate? I'll start with a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I cannot allow them to elaborate. I'm sorry, we have run out of time. We're going to a second round, and it's going to be a 3-minute round, and it's going to be a tight 3-minute round if we're going to get everybody in. So we have Mr. McGuire and Mr. Waugh sharing 1.5 minutes each.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to congratulate you both as athletes representing our country. This is, I know how much it takes. Once I decided I was going to be an athlete, I ran 5 miles and almost collapsed. So that didn't take long to get me out of that. I got into the workforce as well. Lanny, you're indicating you're in Tennessee now? Are you in Tennessee? Or?
I practice law in Tennessee, but I travel wherever training takes me, really.
Then I was going to say, where do you train? Mainly there? Or?
Everywhere.
Okay. The levels that you talked about, I'm more interested in that right now. Are Canadian levels different than what other countries would have for your events as far as qualifying?
In qualifying, yes. Most countries go by what the IAAF or the IOC sets as a qualifying mark. I'm not saying Canada is the only one that moves that mark, but we seem to be the only country without the depth that warrants moving that mark. If we were the US, if we were the UK, and we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 girls capable of running these times, and you want to make it a more competitive team, fine. But when you have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 women capable of even running under the IOC standard, why move the goalpost even further?
It doesn't matter to me if you finish 24th or 4th. If you're, from what you've just said, if we don't have anybody, you know, it's fine. If you're not on TV, you're not going to get more. If you're not running, you're never going to get to TV. So my point is, with athletes of both your levels competing, you become more, bigger role models for that many more people. And if there was 8 of you instead of 2 or 3 of you, the whole country would know more about it. And so I wasn't aware that that's how we did it compared to other countries. And is there a parallel then? I just talked about your track and maybe for boxing as well. But is there a parallel in all the other sports? I guess if we can manage that through Canada for setting the standards for one sport, we can do it for them all. Is that done?
Is that for me or for Mandy?
Either one. Lanny first, if you would.
My understanding for other sports is it's they'll have a trials. It's top 3 across the line they go. I'm not well versed enough in other sports to know necessarily if there's qualifying times or standards. I imagine in swimming there might be, but we look at our top swimmers and we have the depth there that maybe it warrants it. Mandy might be able to speak better on some of the other sporting sides.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, for us, it actually comes down to our international committee who sets our qualification process. So for us this time, there was top 2 in each continent had the opportunity to qualify, and then there was a world championship where you had to place top 4. So everything was on an international level and not actually Canadian specific.
Mr. O'Regan, 3 minutes.
I wanted to give you each maybe about a minute each just to make a closing statement, because frankly, I'm quite taken with both of your testimonies. They're both extremely considered and thoughtful and personal, and they'll be very important to us in our deliberations. So if there's something that you missed or an important point that you want to leave with us to make sure that it's in our report, I'll leave it with you for a minute each if you'd like to take it. Ms. Marchand, maybe if you want to begin.
Yeah, I believe I covered most all the bases that I wanted to touch on. I recognize the role I play as an athlete in Canada and the more important role I play as a female athlete in Canada. I've spent since the Olympics speaking at several schools and at different expos and talking about getting out of my own way and the struggles that I faced as an athlete, body image, otherwise. But then also talking about the people and the federations that stood in my way as well. And I meant it very much when I said that the athlete can't be the one that's constantly taking on these battles. The women before me didn't necessarily have, I don't know why. They weren't making teams, but they weren't standing up and arguing as loudly as I am. And I don't know if it's because of the background I have or because at the end of the day, I don't care. I want to represent Canada, and I would hope you want me out there representing you. But if you guys don't want me there, then fine. I'll find something else and excel at that. And it might take more money and it might take more time, but the government and the different federations, Sport Canada and the COC, need to have our backs. If I'm willing to stand out there and be vocal and face the retribution and retaliation of my federation, I would hope that I'd be able to rely on you and on the bigger federations to kind of come to my aid when I do need it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think one instance I can relate a bit was, when we were preparing even for the Olympics or for the Pan Am Games, there's actually, there's one female coach that is registered, and she is a very high-level coach, and we actually wanted to have her there in our corner, and we had to fight with the federation, and then we actually had to pay out of our own pockets to make sure that we had a female coach in our corner at these major major events. So I don't think that's right. But it's at the same time, we're arguing against them, and then it puts us in a really bad position when we're trying to continue to excel in our careers. So it becomes very difficult. But I think using our female athletes that we have right now, spreading the word, and just trying to really encourage young girls to get involved in sport and for the right reasons. And I think that Canada can really be a leader for that. And I'm just excited to see where we're going with this project.
Sport can be very brutal. I don't have to tell you that. Very political. We've heard that. So what can we do pre-teen and teen? We have more failures in sports before we succeed. Do we have anything educational-wise? We're starting to get sports psychologists involved. We're talking females and young girls here participating. So is there anything that government should do or organizations should do to lend support? Because you both know you fail more in sports than you succeed. And sometimes at that age of 10, 11, 12, we can't take failure. And we need somebody to draw upon once in a while. And it can't be mom and dad. It has to be somebody else. And so I'm just wondering, as we look at girls and women in sport, we need supports. And I don't know where this comes in, and I don't know what age it comes in. But you can see the drop-off because, you're always, like you said, you finish 8th and everyone wants just the medal podium. So how can we support our athletes, the young ones coming up more? That's the million-dollar question. Start first, Mandy.
I think, if you think about where these girls are most of the time, they're in school, right? So maybe we need to start with our teachers. Maybe there needs to be something in schools, our teachers encouraging this a bit more than just gym class. The other thing, I said about in grade 10 when gym class is no longer mandatory. Why is it no longer mandatory? I think, are we teaching them something that after that age you don't have to be involved in sport? I think there's so many different things. I think we have to think about the people that see them most often and how we can kind of get them to encourage. I think I didn't really have any teachers encouraging me to get involved in other sports until I got involved in boxing. And when I got involved in boxing, I had people trying to get me involved in, wrestling or rugby because they saw, okay, maybe this is a cool fit. But before that, I never had a teacher or anyone come up to me and say, hey, have you thought about doing this outside of school? Or maybe it just needs to be a program in school. I don't know. That's just my idea.
I would also state that what we see in school is, and I remember in high school for myself, I was in a sport that wasn't part of school when I started high school. I was a figure skater. I was the weird girl that left class every day at 10 a.m. to go drive an hour to Kitchener, skate, and do my homework at 10 p.m. before we had iPhones that you could use a flashlight on, using an actual book light. And then once I joined the cross-country and track team, I was part of the school, but I wasn't. We have mainstream sport, and we don't. And we have women and girls that can compete on basketball teams and maybe a soccer team. But unless you have gender equity and neutrality on the sports that are offered at high schools, and whether you have a way of encompassing and welcoming athletes that are doing sports, gymnastics or boxing, that aren't in the school system, like how do you account for the women athletes that aren't going to run on the school cross country team and be a fringe team, or who aren't on the mainstream volleyball or basketball teams? There's a lot of women in sport that we're seeing that are in other non-team sports, that are in individualized sports or sports that aren't tied to the typical education system. So I think if the government wanted to step in, and we have our triathletes and our cyclists and our boxers, develop programs that introduce girls to those sports, because we might not all excel as pretty little girls in pretty little boxes. We might not all be team players and 6 feet tall and capable of playing basketball or volleyball. But if you show that there's other opportunities, and if you have role models come in and speak to the schools and speak to the teachers that are from different sports backgrounds, and maybe you'll inspire some girls to stay in athletics, whether it's team sport or otherwise.
Thank you very much. I think that we have run out of time, and so I will have to end this particular meeting. I want to thank Lanny again, and I want to thank Ms. Bugeaud for coming. You have really been inspirational, and you've presented us with a lot of challenges for our report. So thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Van Dal, move to adjourn.